Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the PNY Pro podcast. We have another exciting episode for you today.
Yeah.
We have a guest. He was on season one, but we
Yeah.
brought him back for season two to talk about something very niche, which I'm very excited to learn more about. We have Justin Wang with Exxact Corporation. He is their product marketing specialist. Justin, thanks for joining us again. Glad to have you on another episode.
Hey, thanks for having me guys again at Exact. We are very excited to just talk about some cool hardware.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm actually really excited to talk about this one's going to be the A800 40GB active. Justin, how do you guys actually use this GPU for professional uses in your case?
So the NVIDIA A800 is a NVIDIA Ampere graphics card, so it's not from the current generation. And it's using the older Ampere A100 platform, where they're using the cut down 40GB HBM2 PCIe card. So it is an active card, so it looks very similar to like the RTX 6000 Ada. And it slots into a PCIe slot, and it's a workstation graphics card instead of a data center graphics card. So where traditionally the A100 is like a gold graphics card that you put only in servers, the A800 is a black graphics card, puts into a PCIe slot, and has its own active fan. But what makes it different from like those workstation graphics cards that uses HBM2 memory, which stands for high bandwidth memory, and it drastically increases the bandwidth that it can communicate with the CPU, with other hardware, and with the memory inside.
Is there a main difference between like the HBM2 versus GDDR6 in that way?
Yeah, so the per pin bandwidth for HBM2 is quite smaller than a normal GDDR6, but the number of lanes or the number of the bus width, basically how wide the width is a lot bigger. So for GDDR6, maybe the maximum pin would be about 384, I believe. And that would give you like around 1 TB of bandwidth from the best GPUs. Like the 6000 Ada has like 960 GB of bandwidth. Whereas like in HBM2, the bandwidth or the bus width would be a lot larger. So I think the biggest I've seen would be around like 8,000 bus width or 8,000 bits. And so because it's bigger, think of it like a highway, whereas like GDDR6 might be like a 4-lane highway, which is still really fast. HBM2 might be like an 8-lane highway where it's very, very large. And so a lot of data can be transferred all at once.
Going off of that, I know this card, the biggest thing compared to like the older GV100, which makes this really unique, is the FP64 compute. So, I mean, do you have any, I guess, use cases for Exact in terms of your systems that are using the 840GB active? Like what target markets you think could utilize that the most?
So for FP64, it has been phased out most of it for deep learning and AI, because for most deep learning and AI workloads, they don't need to be as precise. So you can train models roughly in the direction that you want it to go. So for example, like an animated soldier, if you wanted to use AI to train it and how to move, those movements don't have to be extremely accurate. But for workloads like simulation or like weather modeling, those require really, really high precision, because if you get one number wrong, it could throw off the entire calculation. So a good way to think about like precision FP64 and FP16 and FP32, the more classic precision that most workloads use, is how far apart these numbers can be. So as you get larger in number, the more gaps there'll be for a number to represent. For FP64, I might not go a really, really big number, but I need to be really, really precise and really fine-grained in specific numbers that FP32 or FP16 might round incorrectly. And so workloads like molecular dynamics or scientific calculations, we can probably do like computational fluid dynamics simulations or mechanical deformation simulations, all require really, really high precision, or something that we expect in real life might not happen in the simulation like we saw.
So how does that kind of, in a way, reduce the time it takes to create some of this stuff when it comes to inferencing?
Well, FP64 is a bigger number, so it's represented with more decimal points. So it would take a little bit longer, but that trade-off is important for specific simulations or for specific workloads like AI. So if, let's say, for example, a car needed to use inferencing for their, let's say, self-driving module, if they calculate something off by just a little bit, it could throw off the entire calculation and cause catastrophic failures.
Mm.
So while the calculations might take longer, if the number, well, when the number is represented by more decimal places, it's worth it for specific workloads because it needs to be extremely precise.
Yeah, and I think another thing too to call out with the 800, which I think is nice, as you mentioned earlier, is that it is based off the Ampere architecture, and I know the latest generation is Ada generation. However, though, I think the advantage, and I guess from you at Exact, is like the workstations or data centers are going out with the 800s. Are they utilizing NVLink? Because that is one unique thing to this is that you can, in a sense, I'd call it like stack two GPUs in the system to where, right now Ada, you can only they're not NVLink compatible, which I mean they make up for it in other areas of compute and processing power and all that in the Ada generation. I think that is a unique thing to the 800. So, are you configuring systems that you are utilizing NVLink in dual GPUs, or are you still seeing more of a single GPU use case?
We haven't really had too much customers ask about the 800 because it's kind of like on the down low, but I'm very excited to like announce it and be more upfront about the capabilities of 800, which would be NVLink. Something that was missed from the A6000 to the 6000 Ada was the ability to bridge two GPUs together. And I would be happy to say that you can do a 4 GPU with NVLink and have two GPUs connected to each other. And because of the high bandwidth memory, communicating between these two GPUs can be very valuable and very fast too.
Yeah, that way you're memory pooling, and again, if you're running a big like AI model or training a model or inferencing, I mean, all of that is going to play, a part of that. And I think one unique thing I want to call out too is that with the 800, there's no display output, so
Mm.
you do need a companion card. You can use the RTX 4000 Ada, the T1000 are compatible with this. So if you do need like an interface to see, what you're doing. It's capable of doing that. You would definitely need to get that card additional of
Mhm.
the 800. For your case at Exact, I mean, do you see customers, needing the T1000, or is it more, use cases to where they're just, one or multiple A800s and it's just again using it for whatever they're doing it, inferencing as an example or AI training?
I think because the A800 is a workstation graphics card, it's going to be slotted into towers and workstations that will reside, let's say, next to the scientist or the researcher. And simulation tasks are often visual. I know that a partnership with RandSim, they've told us that their Ansys applications, they will run on Windows 11 or Windows 10. And so they require a display out because Windows 10 and 11 are visually important. You need to see how your mechanical simulation is going. You need to see how the metal is deforming, or you need to see how like the computational fluid dynamic simulation, how like aerodynamics, where the air is directing to, if there's turbulence and whatnot. Those are all things that are visually important for the researcher and scientist.
We were talking before we started the podcast, and you were talking about mentioning a partnership with VAR. Can you get into that a little bit more?
Yeah, so the VAR's name is RandSim, and RandSim, they help specify and evaluate solutions for customers and figure out what their workload requires and what types of hardware they need. And they partnered up with Exact because we're hardware suppliers and we supply computing solutions. But it's not just a computing solution, it's something that powers scientists to make discoveries. And so we're proud to like be able to offer our computing solutions to people who are going to try to research and change the world through their innovations and stuff like that.
Another thing too, I think is unique as well. And I know I'm sure you know this, Justin, too, is that with the A800, it comes with the NVIDIA AI Enterprise, which is a huge benefit as well. So, I mean, yeah, just looking at here, you get a 3-year subscription of NVIDIA AI Enterprise that comes with all the GPUs. So, I mean, how can you see your customers, utilizing that with the A800 as well, with whatever workflow they're doing?
Yeah, so NVIDIA AI Enterprise is a really powerful tool for those who aren't really familiar or very, well, I wouldn't say familiar, but they are familiar with the tasks at hand, but they have a bunch of frameworks that are all verified by NVIDIA, and it's all put into one little area, one little library where you can download frameworks and explore different types of um, methods and architectures. And you also have support from NVIDIA's AI Enterprise support, where they can help you get started in an AI workload or how to approach a certain problem. So it's very, very important and very beneficial for those who are like still trying to figure out their workload or trying to get an idea of how to optimize their workload. So it's a good tool to have, and it's a good plus.
So also, can you talk about some of the GPUs used for double precision, like FP64?
Yeah, so FP64 is found on the A800, and it's like the newest workstation graphics card for the GV100, whereas like most FP64 GPUs, like the A100 and the H100, and even like Grace Hopper, are all more reserved for the data center. And so the data center can use high performance computing with a higher precision to make sure that their workloads are done extremely accurately where needed. And the A800 just tackles the more enthusiast side and the more workstation oriented market for double precision computing.
And add that here too, like I have some benchmarks here, which I think are very, interesting for the 800. I mean, when you're looking at, HPC lamps, it has a 1.7 time performance. HPC GTC is a 1.9 times performance over the GV100 in these charts. AI inferencing, large BERT files is 4.2 times the performance. And then again, AI training, is 1.9 times the performance, which is
Right.
great. So kind of leading into that, I mean, where are you seeing the 800 again, kind of like fitting in with Exact's, clients? Like where do you see the most use case for the 800? Do you have more people, again, everything is really going AI right now, and AI is still the buzzword. It's only going to continue to grow. And it's going to continue to only get better and better as we, move forward. So do you see a lot of your clients really focusing on AI training and inferencing, or again, I know you mentioned like simulation, and you want that precise calculation to make sure and like just not one little thing throws off everything. So like again with Exact's clients, where do you see in like the most use case for the 800 40 GB active?
The A800 40 GB active is important in the data oriented space, whether it's AI, whether it's simulation, or if it's like scientific computing. All those industries can value a lot from the A800 active, especially if you're trying to deploy it in a workstation. You can't put A100 in a workstation. You can't put H100 in a workstation. So having a new graphics card that has high bandwidth memory, has FP64 dual precision capabilities, and is extremely fast not only replaces the older GV100, but also brings the acceleration that the data center saw to a workstation user.
I think we did a piece on that a while back. It was active versus passive cooling, and that like you said, that it really is a great feature because the 800 is a workstation GPU. You can
Yeah.
throw it in there. It's like, as you might know, is the blower type. So you have the fan and it's pushing all the air out the back. So that way, if you do stack them or use an NVLink or use multiple GPUs, you don't have to
Mhm.
worry about having a controlled environment like a data center.
Right.
Some of the data center GPU solutions, this goes right into
Mhm.
workstation.
Right.
So.
So that just helps so much more with the cooling
Yeah.
aspect of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that way, yeah, if you're just doing passive, then you're relying on the environment that data center's in, so they really have to keep it controlled to where here, just think of a like, just said earlier, is like a scientist who's working on a project, that desktop can now be at the side of them, and then they can, utilize
Mm.
the FP64 and all the other features that come with the 800, because again, it can go in a normal workstation, so
Right.
that's a huge plus for sure.
Okay, so Justin, so are there any main differences when it comes to the A800 40 GB active card versus the 6000 ADA generation card?
So the answer to like which one's better is very ambiguous, and it's like hard to say. The deployments is very important on what you're looking for. So people who are doing like 3D modeling or like just basic AI training or designing a game, for example, using real-time engine or NVIDIA Omniverse can benefit from the 6000 ADA. But those who need to use precise workloads, the A800's FP64 and HBM memory is a very big plus for them because it's one, faster in those workloads, and two, is able to accurately be very, very precise with the FP64 capabilities, whereas the 6000 ADA doesn't really have an FP64 native solver. So to answer the question on which one's better, like which one's worse, or there's no really big answer. The 6000 ADA is very, very good and very capable for most applications and plenty of deployments that value time. But the A800 is going to be more niche for those who are doing like simulation and data analytics and AI.
All right, Justin, as we're kind of like starting to get to wrap things up here is, in the first season, you shared a really cool project you were working on within the healthcare industry and training an AI model. Do you and Exxact have anything else going on right now that you could share with us, like in terms of a project you're working on?
Yeah, so we had this case study with UC San Diego at the ISN lab, and what they're doing is they're offering a computing platform that emulates the brain using FPGAs or field programmable arrays. These field programmable arrays are modeling after human neurons where there's an action potential and then it fires, and then other neurons will also fire. So their neuron is called a spiking neuron, which emulates that action potential where stimuli hits a threshold and then fires. Another cool thing that we're doing is we have this partnership with Ransom, and what we're doing with them is we're going to be starting to test a whole load of different GPU configurations for Ansys, and using it specifically for like structure mechanics, computational fluid dynamics, and other applications such as like mechanical, Rocky, Fluent. And so the first one that we did it with Rocky, which is Rocky is a discrete element modeling simulation where it simulates particles, so such as like tumbling rocks. And it requires the use of FP64, which is found in the A800. So what we did, we first deployed the A100, which is what they were looking to simulate and benchmark. And what we saw was a really, really one-to-one scaling. So 1 GPU to 4 GPUs, the scaling is very, very linear, which can drastically accelerate a lot of people's workloads. Now, where the A100 is a server, being able to route that display out to the researcher can be kind of troublesome, but is not a problem for some deployments. But for certain deployments where a workstation is important, the A800 can definitely fill in that gap, which would be really, really cool for people running those types of simulations right alongside them. So those are some cool new things that we're tackling and trying to get a cool know-how of how things work, because Ansys and like Ransom, they've helped us a lot along the way. And this whole mechanical engineering field is completely new to not only me, but to a lot of people here at Exxact.
Right. That's why I asked the question. I feel like you always have something cool that you guys are working over there at Exxact. So that's awesome to hear. And definitely keep us in the loop. Maybe that's another podcast in the future just to go straight into that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
All right, Justin. Yeah, that's why I love asking the question, because I know you always have exciting projects working over there at Exxact. So, yeah, we want to thank you again and thank Exxact Corporation for joining us for another podcast episode, and have you again in the future. Thanks for joining us again.
Thank you for having me. It was a great time talking to you guys.
Absolutely. And Jerome, go ahead and tell everybody where can they find us.
So yeah, you can follow us at all social media platforms at PNY Pro, or you can listen to us on your favorite podcast platforms like Apple Music, Spotify, or SoundCloud.
Awesome. So Justin, thanks again for being on our podcast. And where can everybody reach you at?
Yeah, you can find Exxact at www.exactcorp.com, and you can configure your own system.
Nice. Well, again, thanks again for being on the podcast. We always enjoy having Exxact on, and we will see you all in the next podcast.
Take care.